I will fight to make sure every single African American child in this country is fully included in the American dream. That includes the new civil rights issue of our time, school choice.
That was Donald Trump in Roanoke, Virginia last month, calling school choice the civil rights issue of our time. And this election season, Massachusetts is ground zero in the fight for education reform, with voters deciding on November 8th whether to support a ballot initiative that would raise the cap on charter schools, adding as many as 12 new charters in the state each year. Campbell Brown is a former anchor for CNN and NBC News and co-founder of the education news site.
The 74,
yeah.
That's right, for 74 million kids.
All right, terrific. And this is not a great issues election, unfortunately, but
it's a huge issue in Massachusetts, as you said.
That's right, and reform is important for the country. Tell us about this Massachusetts race. What's at stake?
So if there was one place in the country where you want to see charters expand, it's Massachusetts. They are the best charter schools in the country by far. Every think tank, every university that's looked at it has found the performance to be extraordinary. Growth in reading scores among charter kids 4 times those of traditional, 6 times in math of traditional students. But there is a wait list, 32,000
32,000
on the wait list in Massachusetts, and unless they lift this cap, you're not going to see an expansion.
So the response, though, is, you know what, Massachusetts public schools are also some of the best in the country. So why do you need more charters in a state that's already performing so much better than other states?
Because not everybody's getting access to those schools. Okay. This cap would expand charters only in 9 out of 351 communities. And those 9 communities are where the poorest kids live, where the schools are failing. And they have no other option. And what's so cynical and horrible about what the other side has done here is they've gone into largely wealthy white communities
that have great schools in there
and lied to people there and said, if this passes, they're going to siphon money away from your schools and give them to these new charters. It's a lie, but they're on the air with these ads, and it's doing real damage.
Charlie Baker, the governor, Trump Republican governor, tried to get this legislation through the Democratic legislature and failed, and then he went to the ballot. And now that's why this is.
And he may be able to get it. It's very close if you look at the polls right now. But he is one of, if not the most popular governors in the country. I think he has that 68% approval rating with Democrats and a 74% approval rating with Republicans. He has yet to go on the air and make the case for this.
Does he have the money to do it? Because the unions are going all in against it.
The unions have spent and looking to spend, I think, around $18 million. And this is charters are an existential threat for them. They to your point, they are going in all the way. There's a big fundraising campaign to try to help Baker get this across the finish line. And the hope is people are just now tuning into the issue because there's been so much other noise in the campaign, and that if he can be out there these last few weeks, it'll make a difference.
Are there safeguards in the referendum that would make sure that this point about siphoning off dollars from the public schools is not accurate?
It's simply not true. Their charters are about 4% of the schools in Massachusetts. They get 4% of the money. If this passes and they lift the cap, it'll be 6.5% of the school funding. It's just a ridiculous argument, but it's effective.
And by the way, charters are public schools.
They are public schools.
These aren't private schools. No. These aren't just for rich Harvard sons and daughters. These are kids just who need a public education like everybody else. Let's turn to the presidential campaign, and it's really interesting to me. The biggest change here, in a way, Donald Trump not so much in the sense that Mitt Romney was also for education reform, but Hillary Clinton has taken a step back from where Barack Obama was in supporting charters, for example, where her husband was in supporting charters. How do you read what she's done in the campaign?
I think it's been incredibly disappointing because she was a champion. You're right. Her husband was the first president who created a stream of federal funding to go to high-performing charter schools. For decades, she was championing them as the path for the future. And because she needs and wants the teachers' union's endorsement, she has not only backed away from her position, but actually said derogatory and untrue things about charters, saying that they don't take the hardest to teach kids. That's just false.
Which is not true.
No, in Massachusetts, in New York, charter kids are chosen by lottery. So they take everybody who wins the lottery. So it's disappointing to see her do this. I understand why she's doing it, but it's purely cynical politics.
Let's step back a little bigger picture for a second. What is the state of the school reform, school choice movement in the United States? Where do we stand?
Well, unfortunately, this has been such an unusual campaign. There's
Right.
been, for I think, a whole host of unusual reasons, not a lot of discussion about education.
We know that.
But we have to look beyond what happens on November 8th and have a much, whether it's led by Paul Ryan or other leaders at the federal level, it's very easy for Republicans to say this is a state issue. We don't have to get involved in this. But I think at the federal level, if there is not someone leading a conversation in this country about what public education should look like, we are failing because of all the reasons you talk about. What's happening with automation and globalization, that's not going away. The jobs of the future are going to be radically different for our kids. We have to change the way we educate our kids in order to prepare them for that. And someone's got to lead that conversation.
And we will continue with that conversation. Thank you, Cam.